Welcome. I'm Doug Morgan, and you're listening to Uncommon Sense, where we hunt for the truth in the topics you're not supposed to talk about, Christianity and politics. I recently came across a video by Caitlin Bennett where she is asking a number of young people who they support more, radical Islam or MAGA, Make America Great Again. Of course, so many liberal-minded, or I guess you could call no-minded people sided with radical Islam, even those that were gay. Even though if they were in Iran right now, they'd be raped, tortured, and killed just for being gay. In fact, Iran just hung from the gallows 3 young men, basically teenagers, for waging war against God, as they called it, because they protested. One of the young men just recently won a medal at an international freestyle wrestling competition. So here's that clip that I was talking about with Caitlin. Here's Caitlin's video right here. Listen to what she's, and I'm just going to play just a little bit of it because it's like a half an hour video, but I'm just going to play a few clips here and show you what I'm talking about.
Yeah. In solidarity with radical Islamists that you think are not as much of a threat to the country as Trump supporters, would you look at the camera and say in solidarity, Allahu Akbar?
Allahu Akbar.
And would you say, make America great again in solidarity with the Trump supporters?
No. No, I'm sorry, I would not.
Who do you have more in common with, a Trump supporter or a radical Islamist?
Radical Islamist. Yes, I am a Democrat. Again, I am one of those people who believe in human beings and human rights and their independency. So I am definitely that kind of person. And honestly, I wish that any of the people from every other country can have that right, especially as with women who are also, especially in Islamic, who are having still having a little bit of an issue right there. So
What are they having an issue with?
With having women like doing stuff like going to school and having their independency. That is what I would support as well.
But you do have more in common with them. Okay.
Yeah.
What is the bigger threat to America today? Radical Islam or Trump supporters in MAGA?
Trump supporters.
That
one.
yeah.
Yeah. Why so?
Speaks for itself.
Speak for me a little bit.
No, I'm not going there.
Okay.
On to the next.
Who would you have more in common with, a radical Islamist or a Trump supporter, you think?
Probably Islamist.
Yeah?
Ditto. Same.
Even though they expect you to cover up your hair and not show your arms or anything?
Yes.
Yes?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. What is it about Trump supporters that you don't think you'd get along with them so well?
I'm gay.
But you would get along with a radical Islamist?
Yes.
And you're gay?
Yes. Trump has one thing in mind.
What's a bigger threat facing America today? Radical Islam or Trump supporters in MAGA?
The second one.
Trump supporters?
Yes.
Yeah.
I really believe that they're way too radical. We need to be more open-minded to everybody's welcome in this world.
Do you think that radical Islamists are kind of treated poorly?
Probably somehow.
Yeah. Well, I'm asking people today to stand in solidarity with our Islamic brothers and sisters, the radical ones as well. If you will look at the camera and in solidarity say Allahu Akbar for them.
How I will say that?
Allahu Akbar.
Allahu
Akbar.
Akbar.
Okay. And then to stand in solidarity with Trump supporters, would you do that? Would you say make America great again?
No.
Oh, I love...
Okay, so there you have it. I mean, how can these people, these young people, be so stupid? I mean, really, when you get right down to it, they are just stupid. What kind of education are they getting for the thousands of dollars that they're spending? Who is teaching them these things? Well, from the Daily Wire comes this. A University of Pennsylvania professor who was sanctioned by a court for acting in bad faith is set to teach a course on, you're not going to believe this, misinformation next year. Yeah, Michael Mann. He's a prominent climate activist and director of Penn's Center for Science, Sustainability, and the Media, announced that he will again co-teach a course on climate change communication alongside Kathleen Hall Jameson, a member of the National Academy of Sciences. The course previously offered at the University of Pennsylvania focused in part on combating what Mann describes as a surplus of misinformation surrounding climate change. Ooh, that ought to be good, right? Quote, the problem isn't so much a deficit of information, it's a surplus of misinformation, is what Mann said in a journalism conference. He is arguing that outright climate denial is fading and being replaced by what he calls doomism, division, deflection, and delaying action. Oh, the big 4Ds, right? Well, Mann recently confirmed the course's return on a university podcast, describing it as a real pleasure to collaborate across Penn's School of Art and Sciences and the Annenberg School for Communication. But Mann's role as an authority on misinformation should draw scrutiny given his own legal history. A District of Columbia judge previously sanctioned Mann and his legal team, finding, quote, by clear and convincing evidence, unquote, that they had acted in bad faith by presenting erroneous evidence and making false representations related to damages claims. Quote, here the court finds that Dr. Mann acted in bad faith when they presented erroneous evidence and made false representations to the jury and the court. This is what the ruling stated. The court ordered Mann to pay more than $28,000 in legal fees. The controversy adds to a broader pattern of inflammatory rhetoric and political activism from Mann, who has repeatedly targeted conservatives in public statements and on social media. Mann has compared prominent figures such as Peter Thiel, Charles Koch, and Rupert Murdoch to the perpetrators of the September 11th attacks, and previously wrote that the Republican Party should be destroyed. He deleted the post, but they were saved in screenshots, of course. Nothing dies on the web, right? As reported by the Washington Free Beacon, Mann faced backlash for amplifying a social media post referring to conservative activist Charlie Kirk as Hitler Youth, a controversy that preceded his resignation as vice provost at Penn, and he remains on faculty and continues to lead his research center. The resignation came after Senator Dave McCormick, a representative from Pennsylvania, he called on the university to take immediate decisive action. And Mann has also drawn criticism for comments interpreted as invoking political violence, including a post referring, quote, Second Amendment territory, unquote, in relation to President Donald Trump. He has since deleted the post, but of course it was, yes, digitally archived to verify. Now, the course's co-instructor, Jameson, is a member of the National Academy of Sciences, which has itself faced scrutiny over its handling of climate-related materials. Critics have pointed to the Academy's refusal to remove a controversial climate chapter from its judicial reference manual. Even the Federal Judicial Center declined to include it, citing concerns about bias. Well, man has also recently praised the late biologist Paul Ehrlich, whose 1968 book, The Population Bomb, famously predicted mass starvation and societal collapse due to overpopulation. Remember all that? Yeah. These are predictions that, of course, failed to materialize, not even close. Despite the track record, though, man continues to position himself as a leading voice on climate communication and misinformation. The announcement of the course raises broader questions about credibility, academic standards, and whether individuals with documented histories of misleading claims should be tasked with defining misinformation for the next generation of students. So, yeah, I mean, these are the people that are teaching the young people of today. And this is partly why they are, well, they don't have good information, right? That's why, this gay person here can say, well, I'd rather be in Iran than, next to Donald Trump or whatever, next to somebody who is, make America great again. So this brings me to this opinion piece. And this comes from Tim Wahlberg, came out in the Daily Wire, and Wahlberg, who he's Michigan's 5th congressional district representative, and is serving his 9th term in that House of Representatives, U.S. House of Representatives. And he says, last week, my home state of Michigan witnessed something truly terrifying: a terrorist attack at a house of worship. The attacker drove a vehicle filled with explosives into a synagogue in West Bloomfield, a suburb of Detroit, just a few hours outside my district. Thankfully, on-site security personnel quickly intervened, stopping the terrorist and preventing any injury to the innocent children or staff inside. I'm grateful to these guardians for responding quickly to safeguard those innocent lives, and I pray for the recovery of those injured in stopping this despicable attack. This attack, however, isn't an isolated incident. It is part of a broader and deeply troubling rise in anti-Semitism that has spread across our country since the October 7th, 2023 massacre in Israel. Nowhere is that rise more evident than on our college campuses. Students have been whipped into an activist frenzy targeting Israel and the Jewish people. And rather than stamping out the anti-Semitic fever, the faculty are fanning the flames, many campus leaders seem completely unwilling to do anything about it. On campuses across the nation, regardless of size or location, student groups are organizing to harass and intimidate Jewish students. Groups like Students for Justice in Palestine are the ringleaders, often with the backing of similar faculty organizations. At Columbia University, anti-Semitic demonstrators stormed a library, disrupted students, and chanted slogans like "From the river to the sea." Eden Yadgar, my guest to President Trump's joint address to Congress last year, described it as disrupting one of the most basic functions of the university. All too often, this chaos leads to violence. The House Committee on Education and Workforce, of which I am a chairman, he says, heard from Michael Kaminsky, a student at DePaul University and a first-generation American who was assaulted by masked attackers for his efforts to promote dialogue about Israel and the Jewish faith. He was left with a fractured wrist, and his friend was knocked unconscious. This is not what college should be. Students should be focused on learning and growing, not fearing harassment or assault because of their identities. These actions are not happening in a vacuum. They are being encouraged, sometimes openly, by faculty. at Haverford College, Tariq Argab, a member of the Haverford faculty for justice in Palestine, labeled pro-Israel students as racist genocidaries, while praising the October 7 attacks as a historic moment. At the University of California, Berkeley, a professor posted that he could have been one of those who broke the siege. At MIT, former linguist Professor Michael de Graaf, he accused a student of having a Zionist mind infection. That's what he used. Those are the exact words. This kind of rhetoric has consequences. And he says, let me be clear. For my Jewish Americans, Israel is central to their identity. When students are targeted under the guise of anti-Zionism, the line between activism and anti-Semitism is not just crossed, it's erased. And yet, too many university leaders have failed to meet this moment. Time and again, university presidents have come before the committee and refused to take responsibility. They hedge, they equivocate, and they fail to enforce even their own rules. The result is what we see today, anti-Semitism. That is spreading, intensifying, and in some cases turning violent. My committee, he says, has released a report documenting just how serious this problem has become. The findings are clear. Weak leadership, radical faculty, and emboldened student groups have created an environment where anti-Semitism festers, and Jewish students are paying the price. This cannot continue. And I agree with him. This is what we're seeing in our institutions of higher learning. And so you see anti-Semitism, you see a number of different things that just you think, how in the world can these students think this way? And then you start to look at the faculty and you start to look at who's teaching them, and this is why they think that way. In fact, the New York Post said that while the Iranian regime continues to attack the United States, either directly or through proxy terrorist organizations, some of the regime's leaders have sent their own children to the United States, and a number have made themselves at home at American universities. The New York Post shared a list of several prominent Iranian leaders who have children teaching at universities in the United States. And although the report noted that none of these employed in the United States have been linked to any nefarious activity, allowing people with such close ties to regime leadership to teach American students could eventually present a risk, of course. Yeah. Jatan Seheh, an Iranian analyst at Washington, D.C.-based think tank, the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies, explained, quote, I would think that there would be a security risk, as Iranian academics have been critical in forming public opinion on the left in the U.S., essentially deceiving liberals into thinking that the regime is more progressive when it's still advancing the same hardline agenda, unquote. Well, Fahima Ardeshir Larijani, for example, initially came to the United States for cancer treatment. A medical doctor who worked at Emory University in Atlanta until January. She is also the daughter of Ali Larijani, who is an Iranian leader who was killed in an airstrike on last Tuesday. Now, Laden Bazargan, with the Alliance Against Islamic Regime of Iran Apologists, noted the irony of Ardeshir Larijani and her presence in the United States, especially given who her father is, or I guess we can now say was, right? Quote, the daughter of Ali Larijani came to the United States for cancer treatment, and the very country, this is the very country her family's system condemns. While millions of Iranians are denied access to basic health care and opportunity, Larijani's employment at Emory University was terminated in January amid protests calling for her to be fired, deported, or both. Her dismissal came just weeks after her father was sanctioned by the United States Treasury Department for coordinating the response to the protests on behalf of the supreme leader of Iran, and because he has publicly called for Iran security forces to use force to repress peaceful protesters. You'll remember these protesters came out into the streets and were murdered, probably at least 50,000 of them in just a matter of like a couple weeks. Well, Leila Katamani, the daughter of former Iran President Mohammad Katamani, teaches math at Shenanegati's Union College. Boy, that's a mouthful right there. You wouldn't want to be from that college and have to keep saying that name over and over again. But her ties to the regime run even deeper, as her aunt was the granddaughter of, get this, the Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, who claimed the title of supreme leader from 1979 until he died in 1989. Yeah, Khomeini. Khomeini's photo and bio were removed from Union faculty website after the United States and Israel began their joint campaign against the Iranian regime. The page listing her as a professor of mathematics shows only her name and title now. And according to the Post report, thousands of children of Iran elites are currently living in the United States. So, yeah, we're the great Satan, but I'm going to send my kids there for the education. Well, the influence that Iran has had on our academic system has really gone under the radar. In fact, IsraelAcademiaMonitor.com last December came out with this, and they said in recent decades, Qatar and before it Saudi Arabia have emerged as two of the most significant foreign financiers of American universities, channeling hundreds of millions of dollars into academic programs, research centers, endowed chairs, and cultural initiatives. While universities present these funds as benign contributions to global education, critics argue that such largesse is part of a broader soft power strategy designed to shape academic narratives, influence Middle East scholarships, and indirectly bolster the geopolitical interests of the donor states. So, in other words, they're buying favor with the United States by giving a bunch of money to the universities. As a result, the scale and intent of Gulf funding have become a major point of debate, raising questions about transparency, academic independence, and the growing role of foreign influence within the United States higher education. And as a result, anti-Israel academics were constantly recruited while pro-Israel academics pushed away. For instance, Columbia University Task Force on Anti-Semitism recommended that the university should hire more pro-Israel professors, or at least not explicitly anti-Zionists. And they needed to add ideological diversity to the faculty. However, Iran, despite channeling substantial sums into Western academic and cultural institutions, often through obscure organizations, diaspora networks or state-linked, functions and foundations, have managed to remain largely under the radar. Its financial footprint is less visible, more diffuse, and frequently embedded in research partnerships and cultural exchanges and individual academic appointments rather than headline-grabbing endowments. This lower profile has allowed Tehran's influence efforts to attract far less scrutiny than those of Qatar and Saudi Arabia, even as they quietly advance the regime's ideological narratives and foreign policy objectives within segments of the American academic landscape. A recent example of Iran influence is Dr. Vahid Abedini, an Iranian national and assistant professor at the University of Oklahoma. On November 22 of last year, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, detained him for 3 days, exposing his employment at the Farzana Family Center for Iranian and Persian Gulf Studies. Now, the Farzana Family Center coordinates teaching and research and outreach on the history, the language, the culture, society, and politics of Iran and the Persian Gulf. It runs lecture series, conferences, prizes, language instruction, of course, in Persian, student awards, and other academic programming in Iranian Persian Gulf studies. The funding is a major gift from the Farzana family, which supports faculty appointments, visiting scholars, and political programs. The Farzana Center is among the institutions supported by the Iranian Foreign Ministry and wealthy Banyards, which are charitable foundations abroad. They influence the research agenda, and by embedding themselves in a reputable Western academic institution, seek to shape pro-Iranian foreign diplomacy. A more troubling aspect of this scenario is the alleged connection between Abedini, who is the son-in-law of Mohsen Armin, a controversial political figure with early career ties to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Although Armin has denied these claims, critics have long accused him of having held a supervisory role over parts of the notorious Evin prison during the 1980s. Some exile and opposition sources further allege that he bore indirect responsibility for conditions surrounding the 1988 mass executions, or at the very least, failed to oppose the killings. The anti-Israel credentials attributed to Abedini are further underscored by his academic connection to Joshua Landis, a prominent Middle East scholar at the University of Oklahoma and a non-resident fellow at the Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft. And it's an organization frequently called out for its sharply critical stance toward Israeli policy. Now, Quincy was a co-founder by Trita Parsi, a longtime pro-Iran activist in the United States and the former head of the National Iranian American Council, and was accused of being a pro-Iran lobby. Now, Quincy Institute advocates a U.S. foreign policy doctrine of restraint and often contends that Washington's close alignment with Israel contributes to a deeper American entanglement in the Middle Eastern conflicts. Does this sound anything familiar with what is happening today? I mean, it's all Israel's fault that we're in this entanglement in the Middle East, right? Well, Landis represents the standard Quincy Institute position on Israel, namely highly critical of American support for Israel while taking a latent view toward Iran. For example, he acknowledges that Iran has a destabilizing effect on the Middle East, but blames it on American and Israeli pressure. Again, does this ring any bells? Professor Shirin Saridi is another scholar with an attachment to Iran. She is a political scientist at the University of Arkansas and the head of its Middle Eastern Studies program, who allegedly supported and convicted Iranian regime war criminal Ahmed Nori. Now, Nori, who was convicted by a Swedish court in 2022 of ordering the execution of thousands of political prisoners at a prison in 1988, served as the assistant deputy prosecutor at the Karja prison outside of Tehran. And she was released in a prisoner swap between Iran and Sweden last year. And Saridi used the school's letterhead to appeal for his release in a post shared on X in November. Saridi praised Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, offering prayers for his protection and stating he is the leader who kept Iran intact during the Israeli attack. May God protect you, and called Israel on X a terrorist state and a genocidal state. Nasridi also endorsed two petitions in the 2023 and 2025 against Israel. The university spokesman disclosed that Saridi is no longer in the Middle East Studies Department and that the school is investigating, the whole affair and the letterhead and all that. Whatever the ultimate disposition of the cases against Saridi and Abedini will be, the episodes once again demonstrate Tehran's considerable efforts to position regime-friendly professors in American academies. And to be honest with you, I mean, I just ran through a list of all of these professors that have Iranian ties, and it's not just higher education, though. I mean, just briefly, the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, I was talking about that. Well, they came out with an article last September, and it shows money from Tehran and their Islamic dictatorship. They may be funding K-12 schools in the United States through a third party called the Islamic Development Bank, or ISDB. Now, the bank's website shows that it has spent $13.1 million to support 44 K-12 schools in America. We know very little about this money and how it shapes the K-12 education, because disclosure requirements are just they're almost non-existent. For instance, Brighter Horizon Academy in Texas, which serves more than 900 students in grades K through 12, received approximately $995,000, almost $1 million, for construction and expansion, whatever that means. So, like I say, there's a lot going on here, and it is not helping our education system, whether it be higher education or not. And what are we getting out of this? We're getting people who don't even have a clue what Iran and its regime are about. And so, we need to take back our higher education system and help these students, because they are not being taught truth. I would love to hear what you think about it. Of course, you can always do that at uncommonsensepodcast.com. Thank you very much for listening. This podcast is a production of Morganite Communications.